Hey guys, so I'm going to make a response video to some comments that were made to another video that I made. Uh, that's a short, and that is where I think the title of that video is "Autistic People and Silent Movies." I'll put the link to that short in the description of this video. So in that, I just kind of say that I would imagine back in the day when people were watching silent movies, before they people really understood autism, especially what we now call high functioning autism, level one, where um, it doesn't exactly manifest itself in an obvious manner. That because of the silent movies were so and I said I just made up a number. I said 90% of it was nonverbal, or was reading body language. All of it was nonverbal communication. But they would have like car. I'm sure I don't know the name for it, but they would have like title cards. I know they're not called title cards, but they would have like narration cards in the movie. But a lot of it was just the actors doing these exaggerated expressions and motions, and that maybe a lot of people who were autistic who didn't understand that they had autism, or because wouldn't have understood autism at the time, they weren't able to pick up a lot what was going on in the movie. And there were two comments made to this, and one of them was with what I said, and another one was just kind of another comment. I'll address one of the comments, the one that was basically making a statement about what I'd said first. So someone commented, "It's not that they have difficulty picking up nonverbal cues. It's they only have one focus point, verbal, visual, or touch, but only one at a time." And this is kind of interesting. So in this video, I talk about people who are autistic in third person because I am autistic. The thing is, I really wouldn't put myself so much in this category because of the having difficulty picking up nonverbal cues necessarily. Because as far as reading people's faces and their body language, I think I'm pretty good at that actually. I will say there is a certain type of nonverbal communication that I don't pick up on, and it oddly enough it manifests itself when I'm watching movies, or it manifests itself. It affects how I view movies. First of all, it's to address the whole reading people's expressions, their body language. I will say that when it comes to reading body language and faces, I'm pretty good at it, but there is kind of a little bit of I'm not going to quite say a handicap, but I'll put it this way. The way I would describe how I read people's body language, and especially their facial expressions, and I didn't know this until recently, is that I'm kind of using, this is such a nerd reference, but I'm using virtual memory. And for you guys who aren't familiar with that, virtual memory is when your computer basically uses its hard drive for the purpose of RAM, which is RAM is memory that is it's usually it's that can be accessed really quick, and it's stored in circuits. So when you put memory in a hard drive, it's much slower. So what I mean by that is, I know for a fact that the process in which I read people's body language and and their faces, and this is something I didn't learn until recent years. It's a slower, different process. So I do find myself kind of often like just kind of staring at people to basically figure out what's going on. When I think what happens with a lot of other people, they pick up on it faster. The upside of this, though, and I know this from teaching, is that I'm pretty good at picking up little nuances with people. Like, for example, in my classes, when my students are confused or when they're concerned, I can pick up on it, and they don't necessarily realize that they're showing it. It just takes me probably a little bit longer than it takes most people. How this affects me in watching movies, I don't know if it's part of the same thing, but I will say that there's a, like, if you're watching, this has happened to me since I was a kid, and it happens now, where there's a thing that happens where in the movie somebody says something or they do a thing, and it's implied, and the audience is supposed to pick up that, for example, one character is flirting with another character, one character is insulted by another character, and I will miss it. And the thing is, like, as far back as I remember, I would be watching movies with people, and they'll say, "Oh, that person is the bad guy," and we don't know. And I'd be like, "I don't know why you're saying that. They're not the bad guy." Or that person is secretly in love with that person, and I would be like, "No, they're not. I don't know why you're reading that." And sure enough, boom, it would happen. So so that is a thing. It could just be me not just being bad at picking up clues in movies, but it happens in my life too, where I've been insulted by people and I won't figure it out till days later. And I've talked about this in other videos, where I've been around people and like I've gone, for example, going on a date and not realizing the person was interested in me, and totally missing the clues and ruining the date because of that. Another thing that frustrates me is when people are interested in me, and when it's happened and they're not just they're not just upfront with it. I can't explain it, but I found that I get kind of agitated by it. Now, this person's comment, there is something to be said about focusing on a single thing. It's a spectrum. So I'm not representative of all people. No one is representative of all people. But I will say that there is an element of focusing on a thing at a time. Some people that they can't shut it off, and some people have super focus. I have heard, though, this aspect of not picking up on social cues of being kind of distracted or being singly mindedly focused on a thing. I've heard that it's more a symptom of ADHD, and that it's one of those things where people at ADHD may not pick up on social cues because they're distracted, while people who are autistic, it's more along the lines of having a kind of a cognitive deficit in that regard. Something with like, I think the term is like mirror neurons or something. I'm a mathematician, not a cognitive scientist, but I always appreciate the comments. And then the second comment, someone says, "I have ADHD, OCD, and high functioning autism. Any advice on how I get myself to pick up on cues like that? I've gotten a lot better over the years, but I still misinterpret spoken word and body language often." And I don't know if this comment is targeted toward me or just whoever would be in the comment section. I don't really know how to answer this because it really is going to depend. Everyone's going to be different. There are people who are autistic who have no problem picking up on social cues, and there are other people who can't pick up on social cues for the life of them. What I will say is, and maybe the ADHD, well, the ADHD and the autism may kind of affect this a little bit, but kind of calming yourself and kind of focusing on what people say, which can be difficult because, well, I'll often find myself when I'm listening to people and they'll say a thing. Like if they say a thing which triggers a thought or is one of my special interests, my mind will start floating away. And what I mean by that, if someone says something which sounds a quote from a movie, I'll start thinking about that movie. Or if they say something that is a line from a song, I will start hearing the song in my head. Like if someone says, it's the same as it ever was, for example, I will immediately start thinking of the Talking Heads video, or someone, and I have to like actively focus on what they're saying. It can be hard sometimes. Someone can say, "We have a dilemma here," and I'll start hearing Nelly and Kelly rolling in my head. So, yeah, having ADHD and high functioning autism, focusing on what people are saying, picking up on, it's additionally difficult. And I would say to this person, if possible, maybe find, depending on your age, if you're at school, you may have accommodations, but I don't know. There's people out there who can help you with that, but it really would depend on how where you sit on the spectrum, how those things manifest themselves. It's a valuable skill to have, but trust me, buddy, I can totally relate to getting kind of fuzzy brain sometime and going off and picking up on important aspects of a conversation.